We're back to re-releases of old games that were used to pad out the Disk System library, but there's something a little bit odd about this release of BurgerTime. It was published by Data East. Now, most of you are probably going, Data East made the arcade game, of course they published it. Except, when this port was made, Data East wasn't porting their arcade games to the Famicom. Instead, Namco licensed all of Data East's arcade library. So all of the Famicom ports of Data East arcade games, through about July of 1989, are made by Namco. But it seems like Data East found a loophole with the Disk System. Or maybe they just made another deal with Namco. The contract just being for one specific platform, or two businesses coming together to rework a deal a little bit. Both are equally plausible. But either way, this is Data East publishing Namco's port of Data East's arcade game. And of course, it's a re-release made for the Disk Writer system. The kiosks in stores where people would bring in their old games and have them rewritten with new games for a nominal fee. Like I mentioned, BurgerTime was a Data East arcade game, and it was one of their first big hits. Any more than anything before it, BurgerTime put Data East on the map. And while I enjoy BurgerTime a lot, when I was playing this time, I was realizing how out of practice I was. The last time I played it was episode 77 of Family Daily, so that was over 4 years ago. This time I was really struggling to get past the third stage. BurgerTime has 6 levels altogether before the game starts cycling. It was, after all, a classic score attack arcade game where your goal was to get as many points as possible rather than to beat the game. And I actually think that third stage is the hardest stage in the game. There's a lot of choke points that you have to pass through. The goal of the game is that as Peter Pepper, you need to build burgers. And your burgers are all laid out on a series of ladders and girders. Run across the surface of one of the burgers or its condiments, and it falls down to the next level below it. And if it lands on another piece of the burger, then that piece falls. So you're always looking to create a cascading domino effect. Once all the burgers are properly stacked, then you go on to the next stage. Getting in your way are other foodstuffs that are jealous of the burgers. Hot dogs, eggs, pickles, and there's a lot of them running around on the stage with you. Touch one of them and you lose a life. But if they're below a layer of the burger when it falls, they get squished. That's worth extra points, and they have to wait a few seconds before they re-enter the stage. Though fewer seconds than you might think. If they're on top of one of those burger parts when it falls, then their added weight makes the burger fall further. One hostile foodie on top will make it fall an additional 3 layers. And if there's more than that, it'll fall further. Though really, if you have to, it's probably sending that piece and anything below it all the way to the bottom. So one of your core strategies here is trying to manipulate them to walk on top of something that you're about to send flying. And that's actually one of BurgerTime's strengths. Even though it's girders and ladders, this is really a maze chase game. You're trying to clear a pattern and evade the enemies. And the enemies are very predictable. If you're not on the same horizontal plane as you, then they'll take any turn that gets them closer. If they're on the same horizontal plane as you, and you are not more than 1 turn away from them, then they will follow immediately behind you. And if you are more than 1 turn away from them, then they'll turn away to try to cut you off. Your opponents start scattered across the whole stage, but if you maneuver well, then you can bunch them up altogether. Though when you do that, and crush them, or drop them, then they go back to being scattered. Peter Pepper has one weapon that he can use, his eponymous pepper. Hitting the A or B button will sprinkle some pepper in front of you, causing enemies right there to stop and sneeze. You only get 5 things of pepper, however that doesn't mean that you should hold on to them. If you're cornered, you might as well use the pepper rather than lose a life. Okay, unless losing a life puts you in a more advantageous spot, but that's getting kind of complicated. That's all there is to the game. It's very straightforward, but it works pretty well. The original Famicom port has plenty of fans in Japan. It is a good port of a beloved classic after all. The Disk System version, though, is a bit obscure, both as a late release and a disk rewriter release. And my feeling is this is a great example of early Famicom software. A port of a popular single-screen arcade game where the only compromises made for it really don't matter. Of course, as a 1988 release, it would feel horribly dated. That's just how fast technology was moving at that point. Still, BurgerTime is a pretty good game, and I don't think anybody who likes the arcade version would be disappointed here.